welcome back to the Martin and Shithead Show. I am Shithead Dave.
I am Double A Ron.
We want to thank everybody on FNX for being so supportive, commenting. And
speaking of comments, this podcast comes from our one of our viewer comments. I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, but Siam Game, I think it's SIAM Game.
Siam Game.
Siam Game. Siam Game, whatever it is. Anyway, we saw your comment about how you mostly just watch games on YouTube, and it sparked a conversation about how we used to just play these games. We mentioned that in a previous podcast, how I said that I prefer to play the games, and not in a million years would I have, considered just watching someone play, especially like to pay for their way of life.
Yeah, and then I started to think back to the days where I would go to Family Video and actually rent a game myself and play it and figure it out myself. This was the days before, if you got stuck in a game, you couldn't go on YouTube and look up how somebody else did it, or you would have to actually buy a magazine to do that.
You have to buy the $40 strategy guide. But no, it sparked a conversation between us and the old games we used to play, and then which kind of segued into a whole what franchises really have just kind of fallen off the face of the earth, or just in dips in quality.
Yeah, because we were like, man, I used to love playing this and this, and we're like, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's just not here readily available. And we're going to start off with one of the bigger ones in my mind that always comes to mind, and that's Donkey Kong.
Yeah, Donkey Kong.
I mean, he's the original. Like, he's the original bro of gaming. You know, he started off with Mario. You know, that the game wasn't called Mario.
What was he a villain, or was he a hero when he first started? That's kind of like you can go either way there.
I don't know. That's a Han Shot Greedo kind of thing.
Yeah, some people think Mario's the dick in that thing. But yeah, he started with the whole. Everybody remembers the what is it? The ladders or whatever. The going up to
ladders and barrels.
Yeah.
But he started with that, and then he got his own game with Donkey Kong Country, and
those are my favorite on the Super Nintendo.
Right. We got Donkey Kong Country. There's like 3 of those, and that was a multi-platform game.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't really think about it, but those games were not only just not just on Super Nintendo. They came out on the Game Boy, the Game Boy Color, because Super Mario, I don't think Super Mario Bros. Came out until the Game Boy Advance. I could be wrong. I just don't remember. Because I think the original Super Mario Bros. Might have been on the Game Boy, but I'm talking about like Super Mario like All-Stars and stuff like that, where they had like 2 and 3 and all that.
Yeah.
I think that, or not even 3, but I think one of them, there was a game, I can't remember what it was, I think it's Super Mario Bros. Advance. I know that those had some.
By the way, what was so advanced about the Game Boy Advance?
Nothing, but
just the shape. Because when you
not even the shape, they just took a big one and turned it sideways.
Yeah, because when you got to the next one, what was it? The
SP.
Yeah, the SP. It at least had a light up screen and all that shit. But
yeah, the Game Boy Advance.
They got us.
Yeah, they got us. I guess it just felt more like a controller, and it had an R and L button.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
But
yeah.
Donkey Kong was amazing back in the day, and then his popularity stayed up there in the 64 era with Donkey Kong 64, and he was on Super Smash Brothers.
Yep.
But once the 64 era quit, boy, he tanked. I mean,
yeah, he did.
Like his games from that point on, like Donkey Kong Jungle Beats.
That sucked.
Like even the new Donkey Kong Country. In my opinion, it wasn't very good. I played it, I beat it, but it didn't have the Donkey Kong Country feel, in my opinion.
And how you can tell a big franchise player like Donkey Kong is he had spin-offs. He had Diddy Kong.
Right, Diddy Kong Racing and...
Yeah, and he had tons of characters. Cranky and Funky, which was completely racist, but... what was it? Dixie and all that.
Dixie, Lanky.
He had all the Kongs and shit.
But he was huge.
Yeah.
And now, if you're not playing Mario Kart or Super Smash Brothers, you're not playing as Donkey Kong.
I don't play as Donkey Kong in Mario Kart anyways, unless I want to lose every round because he's slow as shit.
Yeah.
You got to be some kind of person to play Donkey Kong.
But I guess that's just my point. The whole, like you just said it right there. That's the whole point in one comment. I don't play as Donkey Kong in Mario Kart. Like people don't care about him anymore.
We actually had to look up Mario Kart 8. I played it and forgot he was in the game. I was like, I swore to you. I was like, he's not in that game, dude.
Yeah, you swore to me. And I haven't played it yet. I haven't played Mario Kart 8 yet because I don't have a Wii U. And I had to look it up. I was like, I'll be shocked. And But he's the only one. Diddy Kong's not there. I mean, Diddy Kong is rumored DLC right now.
Yeah.
Like, so it really goes to show, like, and I remember back when they used to try to make the animals in that game noteworthy, like the swordfish and the rhino and stuff like that. Like, they tried to make them noteworthy, and now it's like, people are like I can probably talk to little kids right now, and they're like, who's Donkey Kong?
Yeah, that's sad. But let's talk about a console that was based around that character, like Crash Bandicoot.
Well, okay, yeah, when the PlayStation came out, they had two franchises that they put a lot of time and effort into. And these kind of go hand in hand, because when people think about Crash Bandicoot, they think about Spyro. And when people think about Spyro, they in turn think about Crash. Just because they were two very similar games. I mean, Spyro was more open world, but it was the same thing, you know.
You can tell for 1995 they put every bit of effort into those games, graphically,
right,
mechanically.
They were cornerstones of the PlayStation franchise. Those two games were supposed to lead them into the future of gaming. And Crash did what it could. Like Spyro, I don't think Spyro got... I think Spyro was too kiddie to really garner...
Well, yeah, look where he is now. He's a Skylander.
Right, he's Skylander. Spyro the Skylander.
But, like, I think back to my childhood, and I can't think of Crash Bandicoot without thinking, Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
He was everywhere. He was our Mario for the 90s, mid-90s kids.
Yeah, he's there. He was everywhere. And now, Naughty Dog is just now.
Yeah.
They're thinking about it. They're just, we might do another Crash game. We don't know.
Yeah, it was like, I think our second podcast ever, I said they'll never do it.
It's like
of course
you're
they're doing it because I said it.
It's like your flaky friend who says he might come hang out.
Yeah.
Like, there's Crash is like, I might do another game, maybe. I don't know. It depends on how I feel when I wake up, I guess.
I don't have the gas money to get over here.
But it just that's what we have. Like, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad to think about, because, like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a connoisseur of the Crash Bandicoot games. I liked them, I played them, but I wasn't like a diehard fan. But it makes me sad to see franchises like that, who I know had cult followings at the time.
I think it's because they get silly with it eventually, because Crash spawned three games. Then they went into Crash Nitro Racing, and then all these gimmicks. And it dies out. That happens to every one of them. Donkey Kong, I mean, they made a game where you pounded on drums and shit.
Donkey Kong
got
Jungle
too
Beats.
gimmicky, and it kills the character.
It's really just sad. And another game and another franchise that's kind of like that, Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, that was huge.
I mean, he was everywhere. Everybody had Banjo. It was in everybody's game case. Some people I know who were PlayStation fans bought a 64 just so they could have Banjo.
Yeah.
Like, these are people, like I'm talking about, like, these are people who had never played Zelda before.
Yeah.
They bought a 64 just for Banjo-Kazooie.
That's about as open world as you can get back then.
Yeah.
They came out right around the same time, Ocarina and Banjo.
Right.
I think maybe the same year, if I'm not mistaken, but you could tell they looked exactly the same in the worlds. But
back then, everybody wanted to play Banjo. Even Banjo-Tooie.
Tooie was good, yeah.
Like, even people loved that game. Mm-hmm. And then we got nothing for a long time. And then we got Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the friggin' Xbox.
Well, that's because they bought Rare, right?
Yeah, they bought Rare.
They tried to, bring the nostalgia back.
But it just kind of makes me laugh, because it's like, that was a Nintendo franchise that was huge.
Doesn't that kind of just...
And then it comes out on the 360.
Doesn't that kind of put your stomach in knots that Xbox came out with Nuts and Bolts, and we forget about it, but then we remember, oh crap, there's other characters we love from Rare, and Xbox owns it.
Yeah.
So we can get like a Conker's Nuts and Bolts or some shit like that.
Conker's Nuts and Bolts.
Yeah.
Well, Conker, that... Conker was never really a franchise, kind of, but he was a good character. But it just, like, even he makes me sad, because we're getting him in a create your own game.
Yeah, that's
like
we still don't know what role he plays in there.
Right, and there was me and Westicles, who does another podcast with me, is on the Fans Perspective. We were talking about it, and he said that considering we've heard really nothing else about that game, it's like there could be a Conker game built into the game.
Or you build your game and you play as him.
Yeah, or you can build a game and play as Conker. Or, for all we know, Conker will just be an annoying fucking face that pops up every once in a while.
Kind of like as
a game hint kind of guy.
Tips guy.
We don't know.
I hope
But
not.
Westicles, like I said, he was talking to me and he was like, I would rather him show up again with a shit game than to never see him again. And that's kind of how I feel like the people like Banjo
Yeah.
and Donkey Kong and Crash and all them. I think that's where they're leading to right now, is people would rather see them in gimmick game than not see them at all.
Yep.
But it goes beyond characters that just don't have games right now. Because Sonic the Hedgehog is,
Yep.
I mean, who didn't play Sonic,
Yeah.
right? And Sonic wasn't one of those games like where it was easy. Sonic was hard.
Yes,
Like,
it was. I still haven't beat Sonic 2.
people love Sonic.
Yep.
And those games, like some of, especially when I was little, were impossible for me. But he's got games. He has a game at least once every 2 years. At least.
Well,
None of them
Yeah.
have captured what we had back when we had Sonic Adventure 2.
Besides-
Sonic Adventure 2 was the last great
Yeah.
Sonic game I can think of. Because when it comes to Sonic games, I love Sonic. I love Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I love Sonic and Knuckles. And I love the Sonic Adventure games. That's 6 games. This franchise has, I think, almost 30 games.
Yeah.
If
somewhere
I'm
around
not
there,
wrong.
yeah.
If I'm not wrong.
Probably in the mid to late 20s at least. But
But this 6 games it's got
besides
that I like.
the hardcore Sonic fans, I guarantee there's been Sonic games that have been released that you haven't even heard of. I mean, like, we had to look it up. There's like, we're reading Sonic, it's like, what was that? You know?
Right. Like, I bought Sonic Unleashed, and I like the game, but it's not something, like, I haven't beaten it. And I bought that game way back. That's a 360 game.
I don't like 3D Sonics.
I
There's no
can't
way
say
around
that.
it.
I love Sonic Adventure, and I love Sonic Adventure 2. So, I can't say that.
Yeah.
But my point is that, like, his best game as of late is Super Smash Brothers.
That's sad.
That's the best Sonic game as of late.
That's so weird. Like, I thought PlayStation owned Sonic and shit. Or Sega.
Sega did, yeah.
Yeah, PlayStation owns Sega, but Nintendo got the rights for Sonic. I don't know, because now we're in
Well, characters in video games are kind of like movie characters. Where, okay, like Fox owns the X-Men, but they're going to be able to use Quicksilver in the Avengers.
don't call them mutants.
Yeah, they just can't call them mutants.
Yeah, like, we're in an era of gaming now that, like, we were in the heyday. Everything was exclusive. Now everybody owns everything because they went bankrupt.
Right.
It sucks.
But, Sonic was a character that I adored.
Mm-hmm.
I loved playing the games, and I would love to get that feeling back. They just, for some reason, can't capture it. And you can't say that they haven't tried, because they've tried making side-scroller Sonics again.
The Sonic Generations.
And they're just not good.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a throwback. I think it's just one of those things where it was that creative team and that Sega office in 90, whatever it was, that made those games special. And you can't duplicate it.
And I understand that there's a thing called product of the times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Mario and Sonic were back then. They were product of the times. The times back then were side-scrolling, infuriating, fall down a friggin', hole in the ground type games.
They were trying to push the limits on what a side-scroller could be
But-
before it died out completely.
But the franchise of Sonic, they started to evolve.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm not the only one. You might not like 3D Sonics, but a lot of people loved Sonic
yes.
Adventure.
Yeah. That's why
And
they keep
Sonic
making them.
Adventure 2.
Yeah.
People loved them, and they were evolving, but they just stopped. For some reason, and that seems to happen a lot with the older franchises, and if you look at, like, Mario and stuff, it'll tell you, they hate evolving.
Yeah.
I mean,
they tried.
Mario's just a byproduct of Nintendo refusing to evolve.
Yeah, they tried
But-
for the Dreamcast. They made a Shadow the Hedgehog game. They
I
tried
believe
to
that was
do-
also for PS2, and those were terrible.
Yeah, they,
it was a terrible game.
They tried to do the Donkey Kong thing where they broadened the universe, gave everybody their own games.
Right. Another franchise, and this one might be controversial, but a franchise for me going back to PlayStation that has just kind of lost its greatness. Final Fantasy.
Yeah, this is all you.
This is all me. I know you're not a Final Fantasy kind of guy.
But I do know that Final Fantasy is a franchise where you have different type of fans for every game.
Right.
There are
Okay, so we
hardcore
had
X
Final
fans.
Fantasy. We had Final Fantasy 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Going way back. And then if you know the game Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, that was on the Super Nintendo. And they were okay. I don't think I've ever met anybody that said Final Fantasy 1 and 2 were pinnacles of gaming. 3 and 4 came out, and they were all right too. They were definite upgrades to 1 and 2. 4 for me is one of my favorites because of the storyline behind it and because I hate Golbez. If you're a Final Fantasy fan, you know what I'm talking about. 5 came out and was kind of a disappointment, but then 6 came out. And 6 has arguably one of the best, if not the greatest villain of all time. Because in Final Fantasy 6, and if you haven't played the game, you know, a little bit of a spoiler alert here, the bad guy wins. Like, not in the end,
shit.
but, like, he wins. Like, his whole goal is to destroy to destroy the Earth, and that's what he does. Like, he wins. He does exactly what he sets out to do.
Yeah.
Middle of the game, mid-game, he wins. And the whole point of the last point of the game is trying to come back from that. That had never happened in gaming before.
That's great, yeah.
People hated him. They hated him. They hated that guy. He was one of those bosses where, like, when you finally beat him, you were like, oh!
Fuck you.
Like, when the little, like, destruction bubbles are showing up to show, like, an explosion, like, when he's dying, you're like, yes!
You actually piss on your own TV.
You love it. And, you know, he died.
Yep.
And then Final Fantasy VII came out, and Final Fantasy VII was phenomenal.
7 and 10,
people
right?
loved the characters, people loved the story. Final Fantasy VIII was great, Final Fantasy IX was great, Final Fantasy X was great, and then 11 happened. For some reason, they were like, hey, let's make an MMO. And it appealed to MMO fans, I understand that, but it didn't appeal to Final Fantasy fans. And then 12 came out, and 12 was crap. There are people who will say that 12 would have been at least an okay game if it didn't have the Final Fantasy label, but that's what people believe, and like some people don't count it. They're like, Final Fantasy 12 never happened. There was maybe 1 or 2 great characters. Like, that's the thing with Final Fantasy franchises. Like, there's no continuity. Every game is a different set of circumstances.
Yeah, Legend of Zelda style.
But the character, the quality of character has always been good. Final Fantasy 12 maybe had 1, 2 at most. They had 1 or 2 characters at most that was good. Then 13 came out. And 13, the biggest problem with 13 was that it was linear. It introduced not a really new battle system, but the battle system was okay. Like, it was still turn-based.
12 games in, you change it on 13.
It wasn't really changed. Like I said, it was still turn-based, but they're trying to revolutionize it. Like, because 10, instead of using like materia, they used a sphere grid. You know, they've always done something with each Final Fantasy game to add a new, you know, a new thing. You know, or at least they've tried to. Like in Final Fantasy VIII, like your summons, you could level up your summons. You know, like, and you could combine your spells with your summons. Like, you could do a whole bunch of stuff with your summons. Like, you could do. There's something new every game. 13, not a lot of people. I mean, when the game first released, a lot of people complained about the battle system. But then after a while, people got used to it, and there was no complaints anymore. It was just the fact that the game was linear. It wasn't your open world anymore. You know. They
took it back.
People got upset about that.
Yeah.
But 13 was a good game. It didn't recapture any form of glory, but it was still a good game. You know, Final Fantasy 14, I understand that that's got a pretty good following right now in the MMOs, but it's an MMO. That doesn't speak to RPG players, because RPG players like story. Yeah. Now, granted, I haven't played 14, so I don't know if there is an underlying story arc in it, but I know with most MMOs, no. Now we're all awaiting 15. We're all waiting on Final Fantasy 15 for the PS4. But I don't think anybody's holding their breath anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that anybody expects what we had when it comes to just quality Final Fantasy games. Because we haven't had one since Final Fantasy X. They had to re-release Final Fantasy X and X-2 to keep the franchise from being almost forgotten. Well, for some reason, Sony, they won't give us a Final Fantasy VII remaster like we keep asking for every year.
I do remember being around when 10 came out, and this kid I knew was completely blown away by it. Now, I don't know Final Fantasy enough to know the journey they've been on, but apparently when 10 came out, it blew the kid's mind because of the graphics or something. The cutscenes in it were fucking fantastic. I think that's why they made
to put it into perspective, like Final Fantasy X, I believe it was somewhere between 11 and 15 hours or something like that of cutscenes alone.
Yeah, it's a pretty long-ass game. That's why, like, if you...
And so graphically, like, when that game came out, first of all, like, the PS2, I don't think anybody thought the PS2 could give us the graphics that Final Fantasy X delivered.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody thought any of the consoles back then had that ability. Because Final Fantasy X, especially the cutscenes, look like animated movies look like today. That's how good those looked. So I don't think anybody expected that. And that's just, but that's what it was. And that's, you know, from 6 to 10, Final Fantasy 6 to 10, that was a block of greatness. Yeah. Like, and of course, you know, like, Final Fantasy games are kind of in each to his own, right? To each his own kind of thing, where they all like some people like 6, they'll hate 7.
Yeah.
They love 7, hate 8. Some people like 8 and 9, despise 6 and 7. You know, it was a block of greatness from 6 to 10. Block of greatness.
Where does this land on our list? Why did you put Final Fantasy on the list?
Because
it's still going.
It's still going, but it's kind of like Sonic, because Sonic's still going.
Yeah.
But we remember the golden era.
It just fell off the cliff type of thing, right?
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's going to be people who disagree with me. Mm-hmm. There will be people who agree with me. But that's why it's on. That's why I brought it up, because we're talking about Sonic here, in, you know, how he's still going. Like, his last game was released last year.
Yeah.
So, but he's not anywhere near what we all knew and loved. And I don't think Final Fantasy is either.
What about E.T.? Fucker got one game.
E.T.
He got one game.
Hey, well, they just dug all those up.
Yeah, they did.
If you didn't know, there was rumors back when E.T. came out that game sold so terribly because the game was so bad. These were rumors back then.
Yeah.
That they took them out to the desert.
Nevada.
And they buried him.
Yeah.
And it was a rumor for the longest time. They found them.
Damn.
They found them. They literally found a proverbial treasure trove of E.T. games buried in the desert.
I've never played it because I never had an Atari, but I've seen it played. It really is bad.
Yeah.
It sucked.
It's god awful. I just think it's hilarious that, like, all this time people are like, oh, that would be funny if it is. Well, it's funny because it was there. It was there.
Yeah, it happened. What about game styles that just disappeared or got overshadowed, or, you know?
Well, game styles, like, it's hard to say that because it's all part of the evolution of gaming.
Yeah.
Like side-scrolling, like shooters, like Contra, those were gonna be overtaken by first-person shooter.
Yeah.
They were going to be, because why wouldn't they be?
Yeah.
And it started with Resident Evil.
Uh-huh.
It started with over-the-shoulder, third-person shooters.
Yeah.
And now we have first-person shooter.
That was a no-brainer. You're going to give me a thing where I can walk around a town and go into that building and that building,
right,
instead of just side-scrolling and shit. I'm going to want to do that.
Right.
But recently, it seemed like sandbox games were going to take over gaming. Like, everybody wants...
They still are.
Yeah.
Like, we're heading that way.
My favorite game of all time is Red Dead Redemption. And that's just because, like, I beat the game so long ago. I'll put it in and just sit there and listen to the sounds and wander through the wilderness of that game.
Right.
You know,
It's because it's video games, in their intended purpose, is something that you can sit down, get lost in, and just kind of take a break from the everyday world. And that's why I think people like sandbox games. Because sandbox games is as close as we're going to get right now to virtual reality, where people can get sucked. Because I love Skyrim, and I can get sucked into that world. That game will ruin my life if I let myself.
Skyrim.
Yeah, I don't. Like, I go hardcore, and that's why I don't touch the game. Because I know I'll get sucked in.
Here's a recent story. We were playing Skyrim. I went over to AA Ron's house, and I was like, you imagine those dudes that actually read every book in this game? And he looks at me and goes, I have.
Yeah.
I've read every book in the game. Like those books, random books on the shelves, like...
he's just like
a Dragon's
I remember that.
Shit.
He looked at me, he was like, do you think anybody has ever read all these books in the game? And I looked at him, I was like, yeah, me. I have. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, because I get lost. Like,
I've always wanted to, but...
There's lore in the books, and there's sometimes you can find, like, hidden treasures on the maps. Like, it's great. And I'll get, like, that's why I don't touch it, because it'll ruin my whole life. Like, you won't hear from me for a month on these podcasts if I start playing Skyrim again.
We'll have to go over to his house for the podcast and hear the game in the background.
You have to hear the game in the background and hear me yelling at a dragon every once in a while.
Every once in a while I'll shoot you a question. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Sandbox. Amazing.
So, but I just think that it's hard to say that a style of game has been overshadowed because it's all part of the evolution of gaming.
It's all been necessary?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part.
Yeah.
But there's some games that won't be, like fighters. Fighting is always going to be a genre of gaming because you can't have anything
I hate fighters.
Like it.
It's because I suck at it. That's the only reason. It's not because there's something wrong with it. It's just because there's something wrong with me. I hate fighters. I get so pissed.
Well, see, I love them. I play a lot of Injustice. And I love that game. That game's phenomenal to me.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's certain genres that like won't be overshadowed. Like I said, like fighters and stuff, because I don't know how you could evolve a fighter. Mm-hmm. You know, what I'm saying is that it's hard for me to watch games like Sonic and Crash and Donkey Kong, games that I loved and games that everybody at the time loved, to die and watch games that have for the last 10 entries in Call of Duty, the game hasn't changed not one little friggin' bit.
Well, what's sad is
Halo is even the same thing.
Yeah.
Halo, those games have not changed one bit.
The sad thing is, the Call of Duty, those are kids' games now. There's only been a time until Call of Duty's rated E for everyone.
Right.
Because the kids play them anyways. The kid would rather play Call of Duty than pop in Sonic on their Sega. Well, they don't even have a Sega. But, you put two and two beside each other, and they're going to pick Call of Duty now.
Well,
that's sad.
The only solace I have is that as long as people like me and you are alive,
yeah, they're fighting for it.
We gotta fight for it.
Yeah.
We gotta fight, because if we don't, it'll be forgotten. And listeners, you have to fight too. Let us know. Let us know via either Twitter. You can get it to me at Arathios, or you can get to Dave
at shithead_Dave.
Comment. This video will be on YouTube. It'll also be on FNX Network. Comment there. Let us know if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or even if you want to throw out a topic for us to talk about on a future podcast. Let us know. Thanks for listening. FNX Network and Broadcast Podcast Network.
See ya.